A chill November breeze swept through Liverpool on 6 November 1870, and into this brisk air came the newborn Herbert Louis Samuel. He would grow far beyond the modest climes of his birth, from a banker's son in Victorian England to the first Briton to govern Palestine under a League of Nations mandate. His life threaded through reform, empire, politics, philosophy, and the unquiet crosswinds of history. Born into a prosperous Anglo-Jewish family whose roots lay in banking and liberal politics, Samuel's upbringing combined privilege with a sense of social purpose. His father, Edwin Louis Samuel, died when Herbert was only 7, leaving him under the guardianship of his uncle, the banker and politician Montague Samuel. Educated at University College School in Hampstead, then Balliol College, Oxford, he emerged with a first and a keen intellect shaped by both classical liberalism and social reform impulses. While raised in a Jewish household, Samuel's religious views matured into a more humanist and philosophical outlook, even as he retained links to the Jewish community. Early in life, he committed to the liberal politics of his time, joining the ranks of the emerging New Liberalism, which combined social welfare ideas with economic freedom. His 1902 work, Liberalism, an attempt to state the principles and proposals of contemporary liberalism in England, signaled his intellectual credentials for the epoch. In November 1902, Herbert Samuel entered the House of Commons as Liberal MP for Cleveland, Yorkshire, his political journey underway. When the Liberal government came to power in 1906, he was appointed Parliamentary Undersecretary at the Home Office and became deeply involved in social reform. Juvenile courts, probation services, child welfare all bore his imprint. In June 1909, he entered the cabinet as Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and from 1910 served as Postmaster General, recognizing trade unions in the postal service and advancing nationalization of telephone services. His ascent was a milestone. He became the first practicing Jew to hold a British cabinet post. In January 1916, he was appointed Home Secretary under Prime Minister H. Asquith, navigating the fraught wartime domestic front. But when David Lloyd George formed a new coalition in December 1916, Samuel resigned, marking an early setback in a career of both achievement and turbulence. Following the First World War, new maps were drawn and empires reconfigured. In 1920, Herbert Samuel was appointed the first High Commissioner for Palestine under the League of Nations mandate, placing him at the fulcrum of Zionist hopes, Arab nationalism, British policy, and ancient rivalries. Landing in Jerusalem in July 1920, Samuel entered a land scarred by centuries of conquest, religious fervor, and simmering tension. He was a Zionist sympathizer, believing a Jewish national home could develop there, but he also believed in fair governance for all communities under the mandate. His tenure, 20 to 25, proved both ambitious and precarious. He expanded infrastructure, attempted to foster economic growth, and worked on laying administrative foundations. Yet beneath the surface, Jewish-Arab tensions, colonial mistrust, and international pressure complicated every step. His effort to balance competing identities attracted both praise and criticism. He later reflected on it as perhaps the peak of his public service despite the disappointments. He had tried to hold the scales of justice in a region where the weights were constantly shifting. Samuel returned to Britain and continued to serve in public life. In 1925-26, he chaired the Royal Commission on the Coal Industry, helping to mediate labor unrest and steer the nation through industrial fractures. In 1929, he re-entered the Commons as MP for Darwin, and by 1931 became deputy leader of the Liberal Party. He served as Home Secretary again from 1931-32. But these years also revealed the fractures within the Liberal Party and the era's shifting political ground. Samuel's steadfast commitment to free trade and liberal principles clashed with emerging protectionism and the rise of labor. In 1932, he resigned from the government over tariff policy. The 1935 election saw the Liberals slump to a mere 21 seats. Samuel stepped down as leader.
In June 1937, he was elevated to the peerage as Viscount Samuel of Mount Carmel and Toxtest. He led the Liberals in the House of Lords from 1944 to 1955. In his later decades, he immersed himself in philosophy and writing, serving as president of the Royal Institute of Philosophy 1931 to 1959, and publishing works such as Practical Ethics 1935 and Belief and Action 1937. When Herbert Samuel died on February 5, 1963, at the age of 92, he left behind a complex legacy. A pioneer in British Jewish political participation, an architect of social reform, a colonial governor in a troubled land, a liberal politician in decline, and a philosopher at the end of his career. Among the lessons his life offers, one man can span many identities: banker's son, Oxford scholar, Zionist sympathizer, colonial administrator, liberal reformer, navigating shifting eras of empire and democracy. He reminds us that history is seldom tidy. His support for Zionism placed him at odds with sections of his Jewish community. His liberal idealism confronted the hard realities of politics. His colonial service foreshadowed decolonization and its tensions. In the corridors of Downing Street, in the dusty streets of Jerusalem, and in the quiet libraries of Oxford, Herbert Samuel walked many paths. He lived in eras of relative certainty and seismic change, through two world wars, the dismantling of empire, and the rise of new global orders. Yet through it all, he held a steady flame for social justice. Imagine opening with him arriving in Jerusalem in 1920, standing on a balcony looking over the hills of Palestine, aware he was about to govern the land that carried millennia of history and conflict. Then rewind to a Liverpool childhood, his Oxford days, early calls for reform, the ascent to power. Then forward again to the decline of his party, the turning tides of history, and his final decades reflecting on values and ideas. In Herbert Samuel's story lie themes of identity, reform, empire, and the burdens of governance. His was not ground-shaking populism, but a lifetime of quiet service, of trying to do good in imperfect circumstances.